what we have in AA is a description. So you can't argue with the description. You can argue with the definition. The most powerful tool God has given Alcoholics Anonymous is our description of the alcoholic, because that description that seems to have the power to literally strip everything that separates the alcoholic from himself. And I could see that light like I never seen me as I related to that. I could see that light like my mom saw me. I could see that light like my ex-wife saw me. Difference was I could see me, myself, and I knew the gig was up. The most powerful tool we have is the description of the alcoholic.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Buenas noches, buenos dias, and buenas tardes. From Studio AA, deep in the heart of Texas, that, my friends, was Reno John that you heard at the beginning of this here episode number 384. And you are going to hear so much more from Reno John in just a moment. But first things first, this here episode is made possible by Audrey, Laura, Tim, and Mary Lynn. And you ask yourself, what exactly did Audrey, Tim, Laura, and Mary Lynn do? Well, they went to our so very humble little website, www.soberspeak.com. They clicked on the donation tab and they made a contribution. So thank you so much, Audrey, Laura, Tim, and Mary Lynn, for helping us keep the lights on with this very podcast right here. This episode is coming right out to you. As always, we're going to let the other folks listen on into the pod, but we're especially thankful for you all today. This right here, Sober Speak, is a place where, well, we've kind of built it up to where you can have by listening to this is the goal, right? That you have a closer relationship with your higher power and others in your life, as well as yourself. This is a place where hopefully you can do some self-reflection, and we're so glad that you have joined us today. I really appreciate it. All the feedback we get, all the listeners we get, I so much appreciate it. And I want to tell you, just like before I was about to come here and sit down and record these episodes, I can some weeks just want to kind of check it off the list. And I have to slow myself down, much like all of us, right, are trying to do. I try to remember what is the intent of this thing. And that's why I kind of talked about what do I think is the intent of the podcast. Why are we here? Why do we provide this platform? And I had to take a little time and think about that, because once again, I can just get going through my day and just want to get it published and get it out of the way so I can get on with some other things. But I have to slow down and I have to be intentional. I have to I don't know if you guys have this, but like, okay, there are times where I can even be meditating and my mind is racing and I'm thinking of other things. But then there are those times where I'm sitting there and I'm meditating or I'm doing a prayer like I did before I recorded this episode right here, and something happens, and all of a sudden I go, oh, there you are, God of my understanding. There you are. And I get that connection, that conscious connection. And that's what I had. Now, whether that actually brings good content to you guys or not, I don't know. I cannot guarantee that. I'm just little old me sitting here with this mic in front of my mouth, and it may work, it may not, but I try to envision the people, there are just thousands and thousands of people that are listening to this, and I don't even see their face. I don't know what they are experiencing. I don't get to talk to them one-on-one about it, but I just pray that whoever ends up listening to this will get what they need out of the episode. All right, enough of my jibber jabber. Jibber jabber, jibber jabber. Is that actually, I know there's gibberish, but has anyone ever, do people actually say jibber jabber? I don't know. Doesn't really matter though. Anyway, here we are with Mr. Reno John, and Reno John is from Dallas, Texas, and this here episode is step 1 of Alcoholics Anonymous. Reno John A, he goes by several different names, has been sober since 1981. Ladies and gentlemen, that is 43 years for those of you counting at home. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you'll recognize Reno John's both his name and his voice, but it's been several years since we recorded a new episode for him, so I wanted to get him back in here and have a conversation. As always, John brings the heat. John will talk about what he calls the distorted perception of reality. And then he also talks about a CMF. And I will let Reno John explain that one and what exactly it means. He talks about how thin blood drinking was his problem. And the best part is his solution to that problem. He talks about how God works through people and the moment of clarity that he has. Now, if you listen to this and you think, I want to learn more, I want to listen to more of Reno John, well, he's been on several episodes. I'm sitting here looking at him, but I'm not going to read out every number. If you want to know more about Reno John and the other episodes he's on, just send me an email to John, JOHN, at soberspeak.com, and I'll get you I'll kind of coach you through it, or just send you the screenshot I have of all the episodes he's been on in the past. So anyway, enjoy Mr. Reno John, and we will have plenty of listener feedback at the end of this episode. Enjoy. Okay, everybody. So we are back at the microphone, and he's already laughing at me.
We're back like we've been gone, right?
We are. Well, we've taken a little bit of a hiatus here. It's been, I don't know, a couple, 3 years since I've actually had you back at the microphone, at least. We're here with Mr. Reno John, John A. Reno John. He's known as both here in the area and in Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole. So, Mr. Reno John, I'm going to have you go ahead, introduce yourself, give your sobriety date if you wish, and then tell people where you live in this great land of ours.
I'm John Allred, and I am an alcoholic. And my sobriety date, by the grace of God and the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, I haven't had a drink since, or mood-altering drug, since October 7th, 1981. And so I just celebrated 43 years.
43 years.
43 years. That's insane.
Wow, John. I think when I first met you, your hair was a little bit of a different color.
I've let it go gray again.
Yeah. He's let it go gray again.
Well, Wally, the first guy I ever sponsored, Wally said that he knew me when my hair was gray because it was brown for a long time. I may color it again.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking about it.
you're right. Well, I guess I always thought that brown was your natural color.
Yeah,
but,
well, that should be.
yeah,
You know.
well, it looks good. You're a handsome man either way.
Well, you know, I'm 73 and I don't, nobody wants to look 73. You know, you got a problem. See, when I first came in, you had a real problem when all the little old ladies would say, "Oh, isn't he cute?" And now that you're old, all the young girls are saying, "Oh, isn't he cute?" That's not the way you want it. You want it the other way around, you know?
Oh, that's funny. You know, one of the first things I wanted to ask you about, I know we'll get into some AA stuff here, I guess it is. But to me, this is AA-ish because you have a very, I guess, unique voice. Like you, like I recognize your voice. Like it stands out, kind of like Gary Kay. You know, like I recognize. Have you always had that voice, that dialect? Where you were born in Utah, right?
Yes. Well, it's just that squeaky. What's bad about it is this: is when I was young. And I'd go around to these conferences and speak. People would come up and say, "Man, you don't look anything like your voice."
You say,
and they don't say that anymore. now I look like what I sound like. I'm an old man, you know. But I'm still I run. I'm still running marathons. I ran 7 miles this morning.
Oh wow!
So I'm still running. And but here's the problem, man. And this was so embarrassing because it happened. I want you to keep this in mind. It happened 27 years ago, and I went to a meeting at Preston. And Preston, that's when they had the chair set up so they were facing each other. They had one side of the room facing the other side of the room, and so I got there a little late. So I'm sitting there by the coffee machine and sat down. And I look around the room, and it's a packed room. Always at 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock meeting is packed. And I look across, went. And this good-looking girl looking at me, young, beautiful. I thought, yeah, she's paying attention. That's good. And I saw her talking to her girlfriend, and her girlfriend looked over at me, and they nod her head and talk back. And so they called me to share, and I gave my best stuff. And I saw her laughing, and I thought, yeah, I got it. So she talked to her friend. They looked over at me, and I said, yeah, keep talking to her, baby. And as soon as the meeting's over, man, she made a beeline for me. And I thought, oh, she's got it. And she came over and she said, introduced herself. And I introduced myself. And she said, listen, my friend tells me you're single. And I said, well, yes, I am. And she said, man, I would love to introduce you to my mom. Honest to God, that just deflated me to know. And that was 27 years ago. And I thought, holy cow. Today it wouldn't even, I don't know what she'd say today, but anyway, those things happen to you. If you don't die, you grow old in AA, and all of a sudden you're that, isn't he cute? You don't want to be cute. That's the last thing a guy wants to hear. You know?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So.
Other than, I will tell you this. I always talk about that, you know, when I think the biggest problem alcoholics have is they have a distorted perception of reality. You know, we're talking about alcohol. Alcohol is not the problem. It's a symptom of the problem. We all know that. And I think the biggest problem is that distorted perception of reality. And I'll never forget, it dawned on me how bad it was. I was speaking in California, and it was at Anaheim Convention Center, big convention, big conference. And I spoke there, and I was going to speak Saturday night. And they used to give you a lunch ticket. The Al-Anons would give you a lunch ticket. They'd have an Al-Anon luncheon Saturday afternoon. And they'd always give me this lunch ticket. And I'd never go, you know. But then I thought, well, I'm single. That's where the women are. So I'll go to that Al-Anon luncheon. So I go to this Al-Anon luncheon. And it was a great meeting. A friend of mine from Canada, never heard her story, but I knew her very well. And she's telling her story, and I'm listening to her story. And a lot of women go to that Al-Anon. You guys don't go, you're missing it. I'm telling you right now, you're missing it. Some of them even wear high heels instead of those popular Al-Anon flats, that the Al-Anons wear. But so I'm sitting there, and I'm listening to her tell the story, and she's talking about stabbing her husband in the back. And she felt bad. She was telling her Al-Anon sponsor, and her Al-Anon sponsor shared with her how she'd tried to suffocate her husband. I look around the room, all the women nodding up and down, up and down, up and down. My God, I'll stick with the alcoholic woman, thank you. I mean, come on, that's a tough. Right after that conference, I was out there Saturday afternoon. I'm sitting in the convention center. It had a mall attached to it.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the mall eating some frozen yogurt. And here come this young couple from AA. They got the name badge on, so they're at the convention. Punk rockers. You ever seen those punk rockers?
Yeah.
Got these punk. This is years ago. So these punk rockers were there, boy and a girl, and they're holding hands, just in love. And the guy's got a pink spike going up to the right side, blonde spike going straight up in the air, purple spike going out to the left. And he's with his girlfriend. They're just holding hands. And he walks over to this rack of sunglasses in front of me. And he puts on these sunglasses. His girlfriend looks at him and she says, "Take those off. They make you look stupid." Just a distorted perception of reality, I'm not the only ones that got that. Normal's got that distorted perception. Right next to that sunglass boutique, they got this accessory joint. There's a lot of jewelry and stuff, earrings. They got a big sign in the window that says, "Ears pierced while you wait." I mean, what's the alternative to that? Just distorted perception of reality. They got it here in Dallas. I live in Dallas now. When I first moved to Dallas in '83, a year and a half sober, and they had one store. Were you here in '83?
Yeah.
One store. You probably remember this. It was over on 635. Maybe it was I think it was on Greenville Avenue. It was the first store. It was called Condoms to Go.
Yes.
You can't try them on there. No dressing room. You got to take them and go.
Can't use them.
No
here.
return policy. If you walk out the store, you own those condoms. That's all there is to it. And what's amazing, I went in there just to check it out.
Yeah.
Not that I was going to buy them. I went in there to just check out this Condoms to Go. And they had they have sizes. They have small, medium, large, and extra large. Now, the large and extra large had rows and rows of condoms. They had one pack of small and one pack of medium. I said to the guy, they must sell out. He said, "No, nobody buys those." If you're a guy, you're embarrassing. That gave me a small. And if your wife buys them for you and buys you a small, your girlfriend buys you a small, man, you know you got a problem. So anyway, you may want to censor all that. But anyway,
No.
just distorted perception of reality.
Yeah.
And I got that distorted perception of reality. It's not my fault. I am an adult child of non-alcoholic. I got nobody to blame. Can't blame anybody. Nobody in my family drank. My dad didn't drink. The other sister didn't drink. I didn't drink. I grew up in a very normal, healthy environment. Nobody drank. Went to high school, never drank in high school. Went to college, never drank in college. Got married my senior year in college. Got out and went in the insurance business, Salt Lake City. This was in Utah. Things are pretty good. I'd go in the office in the morning. And I was scared to death. I'm in the insurance business. I'm scared to death. I don't know what I'm afraid of. But I go in the office. Secretary comes out and gives me these little pink notes. I said, "What are those?" She said, "Those are your phone messages." I said, "Who from?" She said, "I don't know." I said, "What do you think they want?" She said, "I guess they want to buy insurance." I think from me, This is just a really distorted perception of reality. Everything about my life is distorted. But I ran into a buddy named Stuart and Stuart drank. And he drank in the bars, started hanging out with Stuart, and we'd work, and then we'd go down to the bar. And I'd drink Coke. I never drank. I'd drink Coke. And he'd drink whatever. I never paid attention to what he drank. And we get some women over the table. I love everything. I love the bar. I love everything about the bar. And I like all kinds of bars. I like dark, dingy bars. I like cowboy bars. And I like New York fern bars. And I can go to
fern bars.
Yeah.
They have the ferns.
Yeah, they got ferns, lots of brass and glass, bright lights and stuff. I love those bars. Because you can be anything you want to be. Now you got to dress appropriately. If you're going to go to a cowboy bar, you got to dress like a cowboy. Now I don't have a pair of cowboy boots, so about it. I'd be a cowboy. If I go to New York fern bar, I'm an attorney. So you can be anything you want to be. You just have to figure out what kind of bar you're going to. I love the bar. Love everything about the bar. And we get women over the table, and they say, "What do you do?" Well, I like to do a lot of stuff. Sometimes I'd retire. So I've retired. Really? Yeah, retired. You must have made a lot of money. Oh, sure did. If I drive a Toyota. Sometimes they say, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "Well, I'm just on vacation, actually. I dance on Broadway." Now, if you tell that lie, you can't dance the rest of the night. You can't do it. Let's go dance. No, look, honey, I'm on vacation. That's work to me. They pay me to dance. Yeah, so you can't dance. Yeah, and by the way, I'm doing all that sober. I ain't started drinking yet. Because, see, it wasn't ever good enough for me to be John Allred, insurance agent. I had to be John Allred, somebody else. It didn't matter what that something else was, as long as it was something other than what I really was. And finally, when my second child was born, I had my first drunk, and Stuart called me up, congratulated me, and said, we're going to get you drunk tonight. Your wife's in the hospital. Your grandma's, got the baby, your son, so we're going to go out and get drunk tonight. We're buying, you're going to get drunk. All the guys getting together, we're going to go out and get drunk. Celebrate. So I said, great. So I had my first drunk. So we got to a place called the Winery. Downtown Salt Lake City. It's a private club. Back then, in order to get a drink, you had to be a member of a private club doing drinking. And we got to the Winery, lots of lights flashing, live band, lots of women. I had my first drunk, and it was a great drunk. I don't know some people know what they had their first drink was. I don't know what my first drink was. They buy me a drink, I drink it.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 25.
Okay. Yeah.
Kind
of a late bloomer.
Yeah.
In terms of AA.
Yeah. And they buy me a drink, a dark drink, got a cherry in it. I drink it down. Next, they buy me another drink, it's got a light colored drink, got a twist around it. I just drink it down. Somebody bought me a drink, had salt all around the rim. I drink whatever they buy, I'm drinking. Had a great drunk. I danced that night. I did dance that night.
Good.
Yeah, I did. I found out a couple drinks. I am a very good dancer. I can dance a couple drinks. And danced that night. Danced with two lesbians. Okay, they were dancing together, and I thought, they probably want me to join them. So I went over to join, and then they left together, and there I was alone, But no I found out when you're drunk, there's no rejection when you're drunk. You're just drunk. No rejection, just drunk. Sat down and drank the next drink sitting in front of me. Got him the next morning, really felt pretty good. Called up Stuart. I said, Stuart, I had a ball. He said, you did. You flat got after it. I said, you going to have a drink tonight? He said, I hadn't thought about it. I may have one after work. So what time? So John, I got to work till 3:30. Or 3 o'clock. I got to work till 3 o'clock. I said, let's meet at 3:30. So I met him at 3:30, another private club called the Speakeasy down on Main Street. On State Street in downtown Salt Lake. And I remember walking in there. I remember telling Stuart, I love to get drunk, but I don't want to taste it. I can't stand the taste of alcohol. What can I drink that'll get me drunk that I don't have to taste the alcohol? So I got the drink for you. I said, okay. So we went in there. He said, he's going to have a CMF. Now, CMF, it had Kahlua. It was a big frozen concoction. Big frozen, it came in a big goblet. It had Kahlua, Galliano, vodka, brandy, and cream blended with ice. Tastes like a chocolate malt. And in Utah, they don't pour out of a fifth. Back then, they had to pour out of the mini bottles, like to kind of get on the airplane. those little mini bottles.
Yeah.
They had to pour the whole mini bottle in your drink.
Why did they call it a CMF? Do you know?
Yeah. Creamy Mother or something or other. So you could drink a couple of those because they pour. It had 8 ounces because a mini bottle has almost 2 ounces.
Yeah.
So I had almost 8 ounces of alcohol in one drink. A couple of those, you don't got to go anywhere. You're fine right where you are. Those creamy MFs will get you just going there, So about a week later, I'm down. Went to this was not a private club. This was just a beer bar. And in Utah, they're only 3.2 beer. It's the only beer they allowed to be sold was 3.2
really?
beer. And so and this wasn't a very fancy beer bar. Okay, I'll be honest. Okay, it was a topless joint.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a very fancy topless joint. It's called the Joker Club right in downtown Second South. They had one dancer in the whole place. One dancer. And you had to be drunk to appreciate her. Oh, God, it was horrible. But I'm down there checking out the lunch crowd and ran into 2 guys I went to high school with, Price and Bolt, and they're drinking beer. And they said, let's buy you a beer. And I said, no, I didn't drink a lot of beer. You had to drink a lot of it to get drunk. And I want to get drunk. So and I had to burp a lot when I drank that beer. So I said, no, let's go get a real drink. And they said, well, we don't have a membership private club. I said, I got membership. Hell, I've been drinking a week. We got in the car and we drive down to the speakeasy. They didn't know what to drink. They're amateurs. They didn't know what to drink. They said they wanted to get a rum Coke or something. No. I got our drink. CMS. We got down there and ordered them. They liked them too. We started meeting down there every day, 3:30, drink those CMS. Waitress, they called us the malt shop crew when we walked in. Get the blender out, malt shop crews. Drink those CMS. But the problem was, about a week after that, Stuart grabs me and says, John, I got to take you out and teach you how to drink. It's embarrassing to go drinking with you. What am I doing wrong? Well, nothing. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just, we get down to the bar. We're playing this little macho game. Get the women over the table, and then you order that Tutti Fruit shit. I mean, it's embarrassing. They bring it, John. It's got an umbrella in it. It blows our whole image. We don't want to drink an umbrella drink. I said, well, what am I going to drink? So we go out to this another place called the Black Bull downtown, and we walked in. He said, I'll order. The waiter comes by. He says, we're going to have a couple of blackjack up, water back.
Blackjack up, water back. I like that.
Sounds like my drink, I like that. You can order it. I think about how give me blackjack up, water back. Just love that.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for my waitress brings our drink. I've never been so disappointed in my life. Waitress brings our drink. It's a little teeny shot glass with some dark stuff in it and a glass of water. I turned to the store and said, what kind of place you bring me to? They only mix our drinks. We got to mix our own drinks here? He said, no, we don't mix this. This is American sour mash sipping whiskey. So we're supposed to sip it. No. We're gonna guzzle it. Sip your water. Okay. So I said, now, John, pay attention. When you do this, don't breathe. So we talked. He smelled a little bit. He downed it. Took a little drink, sat it down, took a sip of water. So I picked mine up. I'm talking. I went to smell it. Boy, that Jack just clear your nostrils right up. A strong smell. And I remember not to swallow. So I drank that. I didn't breathe. Drank it. Down at I remember the night to this afternoon, went down my throat. My throat got all warm and tingly. Mm-hmm. Down my chest got all warm and tingly. Hit my stomach got all warm and tingly. When I went down my legs got all warm. I turned to her and said, let's get us another. Mm-hmm. He said, oh, no. We got to drink our water. See, that's my problem, John. That's my problem right there. I never learned to drink water. If I would have learned to drink water, I would need to come to these damn meetings. But I want the first one more than I want the second one more than the first, and the third more. I like to drink to get drunk. That's what I do. I drink to get drunk. And my life's changing immediately. I'm getting all kinds of trouble. And I read they had an article. The mothers were mad about drunk drivers. Yeah. They're publishing a lot of articles in the newspaper about drunk drivers. Moms against drunk drivers. MANDD. And I read this one article that said only 1 in 2,000 drunk drivers gets picked up for DWI. 1 in 2,000. That's pretty good odds. I can get drunk every single night for like 6 years, so I got to worry about my first DWI. I've been drinking 6 months to get my first DWI. 6 months after I started drinking, my first DWI. So what are the odds of that? I guess now I got to play the odds. I got 10 years for my next DWI. And I'm getting all kinds of trouble. And people are telling me, you're an alcoholic. Slow down, pace yourself. I said, what do you mean pace yourself? This isn't a race. This is a marathon. Just take your time, pace. And I couldn't ever pace myself. It made no sense to me whatsoever. And they said, well, pace yourself, John. I said, no, that doesn't make any sense. I wanted to get drunk. That's what the whole object is, to drink, to get drunk, And I'm getting all kinds of trouble. They start telling me I'm an alcoholic. So what's an alcoholic? How do you really know you're an alcoholic? What's an alcoholic? How do you know you're an alcoholic? What is that? Don't get mad, John. It's a disease. Okay. Let's go to the doctor and find out. Well, we can't do that. Well, we got a disease we can't go to the doctor about. No, we can't. Well, how do you know you're an alcoholic? Well, you're an alcoholic, John. We can't test it. You can't take some blood analysis? No. So we got a disease we can't. I watch CSI. They tell everything by blood. No, can't do a CAT scan, MRI. Find out if I really got the disease. No, we can't. Okay, here's the deal. Y'all want me to quit drinking. Okay, what happens? Think about it. What happens 25 years from now? I find out I'm not alcoholic. I've known 20 years I could have been drinking. Not taking that kind of risk. Not going to do it. I'm not taking that kind of risk. So then they say, you drink too much. As soon as they told me I drank too much, I know I'm not alcoholic. Because I never drank too much in my life. In fact, I'll tell you a secret. There's not an alcoholic listening to this podcast that ever drank too much. It's impossible for an alcoholic to do that. See, normal drink, I'm an alcoholic. Not because I drank too much. I'm an alcoholic because I couldn't drink enough. You ever drink enough?
Mm-mm.
No, never drank enough. See, normal drinkers, those Al-Anon folks, they can drink enough. So occasionally the normal drinker might drink too much. But if you're an alcoholic like I'm an alcoholic and you can't drink enough, it's impossible. So when they tell me you're an alcoholic because you drink too much, I know I'm not an alcoholic. In fact, when I drink, it's like you wouldn't believe what happens. It's like a little bomb explodes inside of me, and I am happy, joyous, and free. And you want me to quit? Why would you quit? In fact, let me tell you what happens when I quit. I'm driven by 100 forms of fear, and I am restless, irritable, and discontent. And you want me to quit. You're not going to quit. In fact, when I first came into AA, they read me those promises, trying to motivate me to come back. Keep coming back. You don't drink, John. Here's what we're going to promise you. These are promises in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. They read me those promises. I got to tell you, I've never been so disappointed in my life. They read me those promises, and I said, really? That's it? You want me to quit, and that's what you're going to give me, right? I'll be still my beating heart. Yeah. Unbelievable. Now, here's the reality. I didn't know that then. My whole life, I have insisted on having those 12 promises in my life. I got to have them. I will do anything to get them, including drink. I don't know about you, but after that very first drink, I began to know a new freedom and a new happiness.
Right.
And after 2 or 3 drinks, I don't know about you, but that sense of financial insecurity just kind of slips away. I don't need money. Hell, I got a check. We're okay on that. Yeah. After 8 or 9 drinks, I don't know about you, but I actually began to comprehend the meaning of serenity.
Yeah.
And after 8 or 9 drinks, I don't know about you, but I had an intuitive thought about how all the problems that I had, And after a dozen drinks or so, I don't know about you, but it became real clear. Alcohol's doing me what I can't do for myself. And you want me to quit. Now, here's the reality. Alcohol gave me those promises. You can have those promises tonight. All you got to do is go out and start drinking. Alcohol will give you those promises, And it'll happen. I can guarantee you it'll happen. It happened to me every time I drank. I got those promises. So if I'm going to get sober, I'm going to have a program of recovery that's going to give me those promises without drinking, or I'm going to go drink to get them. Because I got to have those promises. I'll do anything to get those promises. The only program I know that does that is the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the only program that gives you those promises without drinking. And they don't come till after step 9, which means you got to work the steps. You're not going to get them. So you can jack around with that all you want. You can attend all the AA meetings you want to attend. You can talk to your sponsor all you want to talk to your sponsor. You can go pray to God all you want to pray to God. But if you're not working the steps, the clock is ticking. Because the time will come when you want those promises, I can guarantee you, you'll go out and drink to get them. Because alcohol will give you those promises tonight. I didn't know any of that then. All I know is that I'm not quitting drinking, because I didn't associate those promises with what alcohol was doing for me. And so I did have a problem, though. I knew I had a problem. And my brother told me, he said, the folks think you're crazy. They're going to lock you up. They're going to commit you. They got the sanity officer for the county going to commit you. They're going to sign the order to commit you because you're crazy. You're acting crazy, John. You got to straight up and fly right. That was the big thing. Straight up and fly right. And that's when I figured out my real problem. And that was Utah is at a high altitude. You see those the Olympics down there, the Winter Olympics, they had the inside high altitude. It's in the mountains. High altitude. Scientific fact. People who live at high altitudes for long periods of time actually have thinner blood than people who live at low altitudes. Well, I've been living in Utah my whole life. I got to have thin blood. It just makes sense. If you go out and you party hard on thin blood, you have a problem. What I need to do is get to sea level. Thicken on my blood a little bit, I'd be okay. So I called a buddy of mine who lives in Seattle, that's sea level. As I told him about these problems, he said, get away, come up here and you can stay with me and Gail. And I said, well, I don't want to impose on you and Gail, and your 5 kids. He said, no one position, I'll be there Tuesday, So I moved to Seattle. Wasn't doing anything in Seattle, just doing a little drinking and working on thickening my blood. And now, I don't need to tell you this, you know this. When you're in that kind of condition, the next logical thing you want to do, hell, you're going to want to gamble. Best time to gamble is when you're unemployed. It really is. So I started playing poker. It was legal up there. And then I thought, who am I kidding? Let me run down to Nevada, play in Nevada. So I run down and play in the casinos. And I thought, who am I kidding? I'm just going to move to Nevada. That's lower than sea level. You get thick blood. Las Vegas, thick blood. So I moved down to Las Vegas, bounced around Las Vegas, ended up in Reno, Tahoe. Wasn't doing just playing a little drinking, playing a little poker, working on thickening my blood. They invited me to come back over to Salt Lake, a birthday party. Shouldn't have gone. Doing real good in Reno. But I go over there, Salt Lake, Friday night, went out drinking at a place called the One More Time Club. Met a gal, beautiful gal, wanted to take her out Saturday. She couldn't go out Saturday or Sunday. I had to stay till Monday. Supposed to go home Sunday. Should have gone home Sunday. Stay till Monday. We go out drinking. You got a problem when you invite them to go to dinner and then they really want to eat. So she's eating, I'm drinking. I never eat when I drink. But I'm a gentleman, so every time I order me whiskey, I order her a glass of wine. Well, the woman ain't keeping up. Her wine's stacking up on me, And to keep from being embarrassed, I drink my whiskey, drink her wine. It was just a bad date. And she said, take me home. She didn't like me drinking her wine, so I took her home, dropped her off. And that was Monday, October 6th, 1981. I was staying at Price's house, went over to Price's, and he said, I thought you had a date. It was 10:30. He said, yeah, that damn woman. So she said she'd like wine, so I bought a gallon of wine. I had a gallon of wine. And we drank that wine all night. And I said, now tomorrow, Tuesday, October 7th, 1981, we're going to hit the town one more time, then I'm out of here. I have to drink will get me in trouble. So we got Tuesday, October 7th, 1981. Went out to place, I went to see the fast show at the Hilton. Had a nice fast show there. Enjoyed the fast show. And then I blacked out a lot.
The what show?
Fashion show.
Fashion, okay, yeah. Gotcha.
And blacked out a lot. Some blackouts were scary, some aren't too bad. Two factors that determine how scary a blackout is. The first factor is how long you blacked out. The longer you blacked out, the more scary they are. Second factor is, what are you doing when you come out of your blackout? And that added to the scary factor a lot, what you're doing. And I wasn't blacked out that long, a couple hours. Came out of my blackout at the worst time. Some people say, did you black out every time you drank? How do you know? I don't know. You don't know if you blacked everything. But I came out of my blackout, and it was at the worst possible time.
Oh, no.
The worst possible time out of a blackout, without a doubt, when you're talking to the cops. Because you have no idea what you're talking about. You know what they've asked you, you know what you've told them, you know why they stopped you. You know, and so you can't ask any questions. You can't say, "What are we doing?" You can't say that. You know how long you've been talking to you. They could have been talking to you for an hour. You don't know. You know, and so you got to figure out, what do they stop me for? What are they giving them? What do they want? I finally figured out they want my driver's license. Didn't have a driver's license. They'd taken that 3 DWIs earlier. I had 4 DWIs total, and so I'm telling the cop it's over there. I left it in my pants. I'm changing my pants. I'll bring it to you in the morning. They would not let me go over there and get it. They just arrested me, and this time they were mad. Couldn't bond out.
Yeah.
Because I knew the system. You get arrested, what do you do? You plead not guilty, right? Not guilty. And then they start that process of back then you get out on your own recognizance. In fact, I'll tell you that if you're new, you're going to hate when I tell you this. The maximum fine for DWI was $250. And that was it.
Yeah.
And you could post a bond for $50. You know, and the lawyer cost you $250. So for $500, you're covered. And today it's tens of thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get on your own recognizance if you have a job, and then you start that postponing process. Postpone. And then when the attorney finally says, "No more postponing, we go to court tomorrow," then you want to be sure and move. Because I never went to court, I just moved. So I never went to court. So I had all these failure to appear. I didn't know that was against the law. Failure to appear. They put another charge on you, failure to appear. So I had all these failure to appears stacked up on me. And they said, "No, we're letting you out. You fail to appear. You don't come back." So they wouldn't let me out. Finally, a buddy of mine named Stan come down to see me. Stan's had a lot of money, had a lot of influence, knew some people. He said, "I can get you out, but they don't want me going to do that. They told me they'd release you into my custody. The one I'll take custody of you is you promised me you go to treatment because you're sick. You need help, John." I'd known Stan since I was in 5th grade. And I said, "You're right, Stan. Bless you." You know? And so I got out in Stan's custody. I had no intention of not drinking. Wasn't going to quit, didn't want to quit. I'm just getting out of jail. That's it. Had to stay with Stan that night. Next day, he throws me the yellow pages. Wondering where you want to go, but you got to go to treatment. So I'm looking, a lot of treatment centers in 81.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a treatment center. I called him up and I said, "I need to come in for a little treatment." Gal says, "Okay, do you have any insurance?" I said, "No, I don't have any. Haven't worked for 3.5 years. I don't have any insurance." She said, "Well, this was in 81. She said, "It's $12,000. I said, "Hell, I want to stay all year." I said, "I just need to stay a little bit, you know." It was incredible. I got this one place, they wanted $18,000. I was so frustrated. I said, "Listen, if I had $18,000, I wouldn't need your damn treatment."
That's right.
That would have solved any problem I had. So I finally called the place. I said, "I need to come for a little treatment." She said, "Okay." I said, "Well, I don't have any insurance." She says, "Well, are you working?" I said, "No." She said, "Okay." I said, "How much is it?" She says, "Well, it's, most of the cost goes to food. So if you're not working, we can apply for food stamps. We can credit the food stamps to balance $9 a day if we do that. In fact, if you work around here and the chores we ask you, we get some state aid, we'll pay $1.50 a day. You can, in cash, you can buy cigarettes with that if you want, or you can apply that to the bill." Cigarettes were $1 a pack out of the vending machine back then. And I said, $9 a day. I said, how long a waiting list do you have? So those other places want 12, 18,000. They had 30 to 60 day waiting list just to get in. "How long's your waiting list?" She said, "We have a bed for you tonight." I said, "Well, I don't need to come tonight. I'm not drinking right now. I'm okay tonight." And she said, "I think you need to come tonight." "Okay, I got a problem with this place. Think about that. You got bargain rates, $9 a day, room, board, and therapy. They can't fill their beds. Now they're high pressure me to come in down there. I'm a consumer here. I got my rights. Make my reservation for Saturday. Just forget the whole damn deal." So she made it for Saturday. Didn't drink. Went in sat parked in front of that parking lot on Saturday. Sat there all morning watching them go in and out. I wanted to see what kind of person, will go to a $9 a day jitter joint. Those guys going in there needed to go in there. You could tell, look at that guy. You're an alcoholic. You can tell looking at him. He needs to be in that place. And I wasn't an alcoholic, but it fit my budget, so I checked in. And nothing happened. Filled out a bunch of papers. That was on Saturday. Sunday I had my first exposure to AA. These 2 guys from outside came in, chaired the meeting and talked for a while. It was a discussion meeting. Didn't listen to a thing they said because I'm not going to quit drinking. They started down the row here. These guys sitting there, there were 36 of us, all men, sitting around in the lunchroom, sat around round tables. And the guys introduced themselves, said, my name's Joe B. I'm an alcoholic. I'll pass. So I said, I'm Jim S. I'm an alcoholic. I'll pass. Well, I caught on real quick. What they do in AA, they give their first name, last initial, admit they're alcoholic, and then pass. There's something magical about that that's going to just take that burden of alcoholism off your shoulders. So that must be the deal. They had it written on the wall, admitted you're powerless over alcohol, you know? So I did it right. I said, my name's John A. I'm an alcoholic. I'll pass. Nothing happened. Obviously, Alcoholics Anonymous is real simple-minded people. That's the best thing they got going, you know? Now, it's distorted perception that is of AA. That was my perception of AA. It ain't for me, you know? And I'm not an alcoholic anyway. I'm not going to quit drinking. That was on a Sunday. Monday, I got to meet my counselor, Dale, lovely lady. She had an hour consultation. She wanted me to stay there 2 months. 2 months. I said, Dale. I've been here all weekend, okay? They've told me, there's guys here, they've told me they're alcoholics. I believe them. They look like they probably are alcoholics. I don't know that I'm an alcoholic. I may have a little bit of alcoholism in me. Not that big a problem yet, but I'm too busy. She says, you're busy? I'm busy, Dale. She looks through her papers and says, where were you working? I'm not working, Dale, but I'm busy. You know, that's true about alcoholics. Alcoholics are the most busy and employed people you're going to meet in your life. So I said, I'll give you 2 weeks because I'm not going to quit drinking. That's not what I'm doing there. I'm just doing treatment time. I figured treatment time is better than jail time. I'll do 2 weeks. That'll fulfill my obligation to stand, to go to treatment. Then I get back to Reno and go on with my life because I'm not going to quit drinking. So she listened to all that stuff. And I said, well, better hurry with you. I said, damn right, you better hurry. So that was on Monday. Tuesday, I got to go to group therapy, love group. Wednesday, alcoholic education seminar. Showing a movie about drug addiction, alcoholism. Don't like movies about drug addiction. Don't like them. Even today, I watch them. So I'm sitting, all my pride, all my ego, all my contempt, prepared not to like the movie. The name of the movie they were showing was I'll Quit Tomorrow. And I'm watching that movie. And I related to everything in that movie. It was like they made a movie out of my life. And they were showing it to I dressed the way that I dressed. I talked the way that I talked. I acted the way that I acted. I drank the way that I drank. I didn't think I did. And I knew the gig was up as I related to that. That was my moment of clarity when I knew the gig was up. What happened to me that night was I quit looking for that definition. What's an alcoholic? How do you know you're alcoholic? What is an alcoholic? I later found out in AA, we don't have a definition of an alcoholic. I could not define an alcoholic for you tonight. I don't know how to define that. What we have in AA is a description. So you can't argue with the description. You can argue with the definition. The most powerful tool God has given Alcoholics Anonymous is our description of the alcoholic. Because that description that seems to have the power to literally strip everything that separates the alcoholic from himself. And I could see that light like I never seen me as I related to that. I could see that light like my mom saw me. I could see that light like my ex-wife saw me. Difference was I could see me, myself, and I knew the gig was up. Most powerful tool we have is the description of the alcoholic because it seems to have the power to literally strip. Think how important that description is. 2/3 of our book, 2/3 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is what?
Description.
Descriptions in all those stories.
Mm-hmm.
And why they put all those stories in there?
Mm-hmm.
Just to make a big book? Oh, you know, because it's that description that seems to have the power to really strip everything that separates alcohol from. And I knew the gig was up. And I stayed there 6 weeks. Couldn't stay 2 months. Stayed there 6 weeks. And I got out of there because I had to go back to Reno. And I drove back to Reno. And there are 2 things when I drove back to Reno. I know I'm alcoholic. I don't want to drink. I know that. Second thing was I know AA had nothing to offer. You know, because you go there, you give your first name, last initial, mean you're alcoholic, and then pass. Big deal. You know, but I don't want to drink. So the first day I'm back in town, I call AA. I don't want to drink. Now, I'm not impressed with AA, but I call AA, and a guy answered the phone. I said, my name is John A. I'm an alcoholic. And he said, well, I'm Bruce. John, I'm an alcoholic. What can I do for you? I said, well, Bruce, I said, I just got out of treatment in Salt Lake City. I'm living here in Reno, and I wanted, to call and report in. You know, thought they had me on computer. You know, if you don't show up, they put out a failure to appear on you and you're screwed again. So didn't want no more failure to appear on me. So I said, well, I'm glad you're here. He said, you want to go to a meeting? And I said, well, I go to, if you probably want to meet me. He said, I'm not going to go tonight, but there's a men's stag, Holt Riverside Casino, 3rd floor Sierra room. I don't know right where that is. I'll be there, what time? He said, 8:30. So I'll be there early so we can meet. Said, I'm not going to go. I said, well, call them and tell them John A. is coming to their meeting. He said, they'll be there. Don't worry about it. So I show up 20 after 8. First resentment, Alcoholics Anonymous. I called, made a reservation.
And no one's there.
No one there said, you must be John A. Here's your coffee, here's your seat. Nope, just some guys smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee, waiting for the meeting. I got my coffee, sat down. Old guy named Red chaired the meeting. Red looked like an alcoholic. Red talked for a while. Didn't listen to a thing Red said. Then they started on a roll. These guys didn't pass. They talked. I don't know what they were talking about. Nothing we talked about in treatment. In fact, these guys were so bad, they couldn't even introduce themselves right. Some of them did not give their last initial. Said, my name's John, I'm alcoholic. Come on, man. You're supposed to give your last initial. Guy did not give his last initial. Supposed to give it. Some of them gave their last name. Said, my name's John. All right, I'm alcoholic. Oh, my God. What does he think anonymous means, man? I know his first and last name now. I could look him up in the phone book, Became right. And they talked. I don't know what they talked about. It became clear to me, half through that meeting, these guys have not been to treatment. So I got to me, I thought, I can help here. Now I got some reason to be here. I can help them. And I qualified. I said, my name's John A. I'm an alcoholic. And I said, listen, I just got out of treatment in Salt Lake City. And I want you to know I have the latest, most up-to-date medical and psychological information on the disease. My second resentment, Red cut me off, said, thank you, John. Well, the next guy. I thought, son of a bitch is jealous. I know stuff he don't know. That's his problem right there. After me, some guys come up and shook my hand and said, hope you come back. I said, I'll be back. They need me down there. They need me. And so what happened was I started going around. Now, Chuck Trim used to say, every man's my teacher. Some people teach me what to do. Some people teach me what not to do. Most of what I share at any time in AA is what not to do, because I've done this deal all wrong. So I don't know where I was when they said 90 meetings in 90 days. I never heard that. I did one meeting a week. Every Thursday, I got my men stacked. They'll not let me share, but I keep going back. I thought, I'm a lot younger than Red. Red's going to die, then I get to share. Now, one of the things they told me in treatment, which is true, they said, John, don't drink. If you don't drink, you'll feel better. That's true, but they didn't tell me what that meant. If you don't drink, you will feel better. You're going to feel everything better. You're going to feel all the pain, all the resentments, all the anxiety. You can feel that crap a whole lot better. So I'm walking around Reno feeling better, going nuts. I drink when I feel better. So the reality of the thing. And so I'm down there. It's Christmas Eve. Been there 3 weeks, not sharing. I'm about ready to leave. They don't let me share. And they announced at Christmas Eve, they said, now tomorrow's Christmas Day. You got nowhere to go to Christmas. You go to the Dryers Club, Skid Row Clubhouse on Wells Street, still there. Free Christmas dinner. Alan's fixing it. I know where to go Christmas, so I go to the Dryers Club. Found it. I ate. It was good. I'm sitting there smoking a cigarette, drinking a cup of coffee, not bothering anybody. Old timer spotted me. Gosh, when they spot you, their eyes glaze over, and they start to salivate. They really do. And they start coming. I thought, no, come over here. He's not my kind of guy. Old guy, fat old guy. Not my kind of guy. Funny hair, big nose, nothing cool about him at all. I like cool guys. This guy is not cool. Comes on, introduces himself. His name's Don. Tells me he's the coordinator of intergroup. I don't know what that is, but I thought, I'm glad they found something for you to do. So I'm talking to Don. It became clear after just a few minutes, Don had not been to treatment. So I started to tell Don about all the stuff. They're not let me talk about it. I need to share this information with somebody. They don't let me talk about it. Don gets a funny look on his face and says, you want to go to a meeting with me tonight? I said, Don, I go Thursdays. It's Friday. He said, we got a meeting every night in Reno. And that short time I'd been going to AA, I'd heard, okay, AA is a spiritual meeting, right? It's a spiritual program. AA is a spiritual, it's Christmas. Spiritual program. I can go twice this week. Won't hurt. So Don comes and gets me. We got to the state hospital. and 7:00 meeting on Friday night, and they give you a raffle ticket. Walk into the meeting with a raffle ticket, and at the end of the meeting, they raffle off a big buck, or as Bill sees it. So I get my raffle ticket, walk in. Women in the meeting. First meeting I've been to with women in the meeting. I thought, why am I going Thursday when I can come here Friday?
With women.
With women in the meeting. My new home group, baby. I'll be back here next Friday. You don't need to tell me to come back. So they had a meeting. I don't know what they talked about because I'm busy praying. Because although I read real good, I forgot to get a big book. Didn't have a big book. This is it. This is Christmas Day. This is going to be God's gift to me on Christmas. I'm winning the book. God's gift to me on Christmas Day. I'm winning the book. Prayed all meeting for the book. Want the book. Book's my book. I want the book. And the meeting had the raffle off the big book. Third resentment in AA. Some little greater lady, 25 years old, wins my book. So what's she doing winning my book? She's got 5 home collecting dust. Came to see the Read Woman's Soul. I'm leaving before I get out of there. That little lady comes up and gives me that book. That's where I got my big book. That literally was the only Christmas gift I got that year, was that big book. And I took that book home and I started reading it. And the next day, Don calls me up and he says, we didn't have caller ID, or I wouldn't answer the phone. But he calls me up. Every day, this guy's calling me up, take me to a meeting. And I don't want to go. I went last night. Where did I go tonight for? I went last night. I'm not going to go every night. Come on. But every day, take me to a meeting. He didn't ask. He says, I'll pick up in 20 minutes. Hangs up the phone. I'm going to stand him up. Now, wait a minute. You're the only guy talking to me. If I don't go, he's going to talk about me behind my back. I got to go. So I go to meet. Now, I didn't have a sponsor. Hadn't worked any steps. The only change in my life is a meeting every single day. And all of a sudden, sobriety started putting on flesh and bones. And I started to really get excited about AA. And I started meeting other men in Alcoholics Anonymous. I started meeting them. And I started getting bonds with them. And I started loving to go to AA. I started going down to intergroup, hanging out intergroup with this guy I don't like. At intergroup. And a week later, I'm down at intergroup during the day, hanging out with Don, and I don't like Don. I'm hanging out with Don at intergroup during the day, going to my meeting. He's taking me to a meeting that night. And the phone rings, intergroup. I grab the phone. And it's New Year's Eve. Young kid named Glenn. Now, Glenn's 17 years old and wants to know how to stay sober New Year's Eve. I said, why? Glenn, you're 17. It's New Year's Eve. Call tomorrow. We're here early, 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock in the morning. We'll be here. Don grabs that phone away from me, talks to Glenn, gave me his phone, not gave him his phone number, didn't give him my phone number. Next day, Don calls me and says, hey, Glenn stayed sober last night, wants to go to a meeting today. I thought, great, my first 12-step call. So Don comes and gets me. We got to get Glenn. I'm waiting for Don to show me how to prepare people for AA. First 12-step. He's not preparing Glenn for AA. He's just driving the car. Oh, hell, I got to do it all. So I started telling Glenn, you got women in your first meeting. I know they're there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You get women right out of the chute. Next week without Don, I'll bring you back here, will you? And Glenn, we get a raffle ticket. Hang on the raffle ticket. And in the meantime, they have a raffle off the big book, or as Bill sees it, I recommend the big book. If God loves you, you'll win the big book. Don didn't say, Don just drove to the meeting. So when we get to the meeting, we get a raffle ticket. I don't know what to talk about because I'm praying for Glenn. Come on, God, let Glenn win that book. Glenn can win that book. That'll be proof that God is working in his life. Not that it matters, but I would have 100% 12-step call success rate. Glenn can just win the book. Come on, God, let Glenn win the book. So I don't know. They had the raffle off the big book. I won the big book. Don turned to me and says, yeah, that works. I said, yeah, I signed it, gave it. That's where Glenn got his big book. Glenn's sober today because I gave him that book.
Because you gave
I gave him that book, right. Now, that little experience early in my sobriety taught me a lot because it taught me how God works. Because God works through people. See, I could have won the big book the first night there, but one winner, me. Whenever God works, it's a win-win deal. There are always 2 winners when God works. That's why it works through people, because that makes 2 winners. That first night I could have won the big book, there had been 1 winner, me. But the little lady won by being able to share with me, and I won by being able to receive from her. A week later, 2 winners. I won by sharing it with Glenn. Glenn won it by being able to receive it from me. 2 winners. God works through people. Now, I've told that story 1,000 times in 43 years. Every time I tell that story, I remember that moment of clarity when I knew the gig was up. I'm convinced all of us here listen to this tape, if you're in AA, have had that moment of clarity when you knew the gig was up, because that moment of clarity that we talk about is the miracle. That's the miracle God gives the alcoholic. And it usually happens to us, that moment of clarity, before you get to AA. When you show up in AA, we assume you've had that miracle. And the proof of that statement is your last drink. Bet a whole lot of money when you had your last drink, you had no idea that was your last drink.
Right.
Why was that your last drink? I don't know. I hung over, woke up, turned on the TV, and had a thing up, the commercial. First time I said, you want to stay sober, call this number. Call the number, been sober ever since. Answered the phone. Young guy, hadn't talked to this guy for 6 years. Used to drink with him. He called me and said, I want to come by and see you. Came by to see me. He was sober in AA, took me to a meeting that night. Haven't had drinks since. The miracle's already happened in your life. If you're listening to this podcast, you've had the miracle. Don't turn your back on that miracle. You've already had it. We're going to talk about the rest of the miracles when we come back.
Well, yes. That is quite a ride you just took me on, and I'm sure the listeners as well. And we're going to have to schedule some more time to have you come back, talk about some additional steps, talk about some more of your journey. Would you be okay doing that?
That'll be fine.
That'd be great. Thank you. All right. So as usual, Mr. Reno John, I'm going to close it out here with page 164 from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us, like me and Reno John, as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Once again, John, thanks for coming in here and sharing your story. I appreciate it. As always, as I said on the beginning of this episode, Mr. John A. Reno John, as we call him, always brings the heat, and it's such a great time when we are able to get together. It's always the highlight of my day. And if you happen to be listening out there, Mr. Reno John, thank you so much for coming by the studio and recording your experience, strength, and hope around step 1 of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, oh, by the way, remember now, we do not want you sharing your toothbrush, but we would love for you to share that episode with another friend or family member. It may be just what they need today. So pause that little device and click that share button and get it on over to them. Thanks again, Reno John. Gary B. writes in for listener feedback. And Gary, the title of this is Podcast Release. Now, we happened to record Gary quite some time ago, and he wrote in and he said this, John, your timing for the podcast release was on point. I got to listen to it as I drove home from the Winter Awakening, which was an amazing weekend for me. It's a conference that Gary attends. I was able to attend without fear and show up with love, support, and recovery for all. We had 105 attendees, and everyone was able to be supportive, vulnerable, and loving. Very cool, Gary. Since our recording, I have decided to go back to therapy as issues about my real father have been showing up. One of the workshops that I attended at the retreat was, quote, inner child, quote unquote, work. And I unlocked something I have been working on. It allowed me to cry in a safe space and share the story of what I am working on with others. I still have more work to do with my therapist, but it was very helpful. And he attached the schedule for the Winter Awakening because he heard me bumbling around about that particular conference when I was when I was recording his episode previously, but he attached it for me. He says because you are curious about our recording, about the workshops and activities for the retreat. Thank you for all you do, and thank you, Mr. Gary. It's been so wonderful to meet your acquaintance, and I'm so glad that I'm able to be a very small part of your journey. And if anybody's out there and they want the that workshop, or excuse me, that conference PDF, which includes the activities that are on the retreat, reach out to me, and I'll probably just get you in touch with Gary. But I'm at John, JOHN, at soberspeak.com, and we'll get you the information that you need. And then Gary ends that. Thanks for all you do, Gary B. Thank you, Gary. Taylor writes in, and Taylor says, "Hey, John, so I was listening to episode 377 with Sam M, and I heard you mention me during listener feedback. So I thought I'd tell you a bit more about myself." Well, you'll get to hear about yourself twice here, Taylor. First of all, he says, "I am a man," laugh out loud. And I think the reason he's saying that is because Taylor can be, I'm sure most people know this, both a man name and a woman name, or girl, boy, whatever you want to say. And so he probably just wants to distinguish that. He says, "I have 3 kids, 2 adopted and 1 who passed away on February 3rd of 2019. Wow. I actually just restarted my sobriety date to September 23rd. I was still smoking weed up until September. I felt like I was not being true to myself for the program. I don't want to get in a position where I am sharing my experience, strength, and hope with another person and tell them that the program works if I am not practicing it fully. Like the big book says, half measures avail us nothing. If I am working on the program, I have to do it fully. I hope that all makes sense. It does, Taylor. Yours truly, Taylor M. Well, God bless you, Mr. Taylor M. Thank you so much for writing in. I appreciate you. And that one is another episode in the books here. What was that? Episode number 384, right? Yeah, 384. But anyway, that's another episode in the books. As I always say, keep coming back. It works if you work it. I take this 1 week at a time. Hope to be back next week, but one never knows. And may God bless you and keep you until then. Once again, thanks everybody for joining in. Hopefully we'll see you next week.